when you look at the AAC and all the expectations for this team and what they needed to get done, you have Tulane in the way, who's undefeated in conference, but you have a chance to go beat them at the end of the season. I very much expect this team to be 10-1 going into that game against Tulane.
Right.
But when we look at the two teams that are also ahead of you in the standings, you have Army and you have Navy. And neither one of those teams play each other in the regular season because I don't know why the AAC decided that won't be a conference game, but whatever. It is what it is. But you just look at those teams' path, man, and it seems like even if this Tiger team goes 11-1, they may not actually get to the AAC championship. Army, all they have left in conference is North Texas and UTSA.
I mean, I think
Navy
November 9th
on the other side.
Yeah, November 9th.
Navy. Go ahead.
I was just going to say North Texas on November 9th with Army might be the only chance that we have.
Well, we'll discuss that in a second, but still, I mean, I've seen North Texas's defense. Right. But then you also, for Navy, it's Rice, South Florida, who's looked abysmal lately, Tulane, but remember, even if Tulane beats them, they have the tiebreaker over you because they beat you, Navy. And then, of course, they have East Carolina to end the year. So you're going to have to hope for 2 losses from Navy or the 1 loss from Army to North Texas on the road, and then you're going to have to hope you win a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Like you have put yourself with 1 loss in this really tough situation. I think it would be brutal to stand there at the end of the year, Kenny. Like, this is a realistic possibility. You could be standing there at the end of the year with an unbelievably good win over Tulane at 11-1, and you could miss out on the AAC championship. Think about that scenario. That's brutal.
It is brutal, but what can the Tigers do other than, I mean, I know they lost the Navy game, but if Navy goes on and wins every single game in conference and they're ranked in the top 25, then of course that they're a good team, and that wasn't a bad loss, but they just unfortunately got hit with a really good Navy team and Army having a super easy schedule coming in the first year.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, what's more likely, right? Like, what's more likely and all? Like, is it Navy losing 2 games or Army losing to North Texas and then you ultimately winning a tiebreaker? I guess you'd probably lean the North Texas direction because I don't think Navy's going to lose 2 games to their remaining competition. They got 2 games between Rice, South Florida, Tulane, and East Carolina. It's possible,
South Florida,
but
Tulane.
It's not like,
I mean, they're actually playing teams that were ranked in the top, that were picked in the top 4 of the conference. I mean, South Florida and Tulane are.
But South Florida, man, they
struggle.
That team is not near what we thought they would be.
If they get their quarterback back, I think they'll be fine. But that I would say potentially, because the South Florida game's in Florida, the Tulane game's in Annapolis, but I mean, I would say more than likely, I would suspect Navy would lose. What an epic collapse that would be if they lost 2 games in the last.
I know, but I just don't see them losing 2 games the way they've been rolling, man.
Oh no, I agree.
That team's offense is it's prolific.
They're very good.
Yeah. And I had this debate real quick before we go ahead and get into the hot 3. Who do you think has the better offense, Army or Navy? Just a quick debate. I want to hear. Pick a side.
I have not yet seen an Army game this year, so I couldn't tell you.
Well, then this is. But
I being able to produce the G5 classified podcast with Gabe Kuhn and Kyron Samuels every
yes, sir. Listen to it right here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network
every Thursday at 12 p.m. We had a chance to interview the Navy head coach, and I told him as we were kind of getting ready to record, I was like, man, it's so fun to watch y'all play offense. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's a beautiful offense. It's fun to watch. They do a lot of things that just make your head spin, right? Like the offensive formations and how they do things better. You know what it's called, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of just as a casual fan watching football, I'm like, man, that is fun to watch. Like, so I would say, just because I haven't seen Army play much, I would say Navy is my favorite team.
Well, I'll say this. I think Army has the better and more experienced personnel. Bryson Daly is unbelievable. They lead the country in rushing yards, but they don't have as much optionality as Navy.
Right.
Like they run the triple option. They go under center. That's what they do. And they've been airing it out a little bit more because Bryson Daly's experience and they're very comfortable with it. But Navy goes into, they can do a triple option. They can get into wing T concepts. Then they can drop back. And like, imagine as a defense, I always try to like put this into perspective for people. When you're trying to defend against a triple option, you pack the box. Right. You're in a 4-point stance. You're ready to fire out as hard as possible. Then they shift into two wide receiver sets on both sides, and he's in the shotgun. And then I have to think like, oh shit, how do I adjust to this?
Right.
How do I adjust to the shift they just made if they're going to start throwing 9 routes down the sideline?
Right.
I was expecting them to run a dive with their fullback. Now they're throwing a 9 route to a guy who runs a 4-4 on the outside. That's really hard to defend.
It's really tough. Yeah.
But we'll see how it all shakes out. But I know
how devastating
out here.
How devastating would it be if 11-1, no AAC championship?
It's devastating, but I hate to say it.
It sounds.
I think it's
pretty likely at this point.
Listen, Tulane is going to be a relative toss-up game, and I may lean to Tulane right now. Memphis can prove me wrong, but I think it'll be a relative toss-up game.